Welcome to the News Review. Iranian parliament speaker says that the Islamic Republic will revisit its approach if Europe fails to adopt a fair stance on the country's nuclear issue. Ali Larijani says that Tehran will reconsider its cooperation with the IAEA if the Europeans use the snapback mechanism stipulated in the nuclear deal. He says lawmakers have introduced a motion on reviewing Iran's cooperation with the agency. Larijani says that Iran's move will be proportionate to Europe's behavior. The top parliamentarian says it's regrettable to see the three European signatories to the nuclear deal seek to touch off the snapback mechanism. Let's now see what our panelists think about these things going on as regards the Iran deal. So we'll have Marcus Papadopoulos, publisher and editor of Politics First from London, and Bresh Jonkers, historian and journalist, are joining us from Essek in Belgium. Good to have you, gentlemen. First to London, Marcus. In return for making good on their commitments and promises within the JCPOA, Europeans are triggering this snapback mechanism. What does this mean? Is this fair?
Well, first of all, there is a crisis concerning the JCPOA, but that is a crisis which is the doing of the Americans. Because firstly, Washington withdrew from the JCPOA, and secondly, ever since Washington withdrew itself from the landmark agreement with Iran, the Americans have been piling pressure on Britain, France and Germany, especially the latter two countries, to also withdraw from the JCPOA. And I should also add, the Americans are using economic blackmail against Germany and France to withdraw from the JCPOA. And reports have risen recently that the Americans are also employing economic blackmail against their lackey, Britain. So this is a crisis which is the doing of the Americans. But if you read American media, British media, you wouldn't form the opinion that the crisis is due to America, because the British and American media outlets are pointing the finger of blame at Iran. But then we know that British and American mainstream media is neither independent nor free. It is part of the American and British establishments, respectively. Alas, the free world is not so free. Right. And anyone who is au fait with the JCPOA knows that Iran has fully complied. And Iran is a self-respecting country. And the JCPOA clearly stipulates that if one of the parties fails to comply with the terms of the agreement, then there is recourse for other parties. And in Iran's case, Iran has said to the European powers that they must install the Intex system so that Iran can export oil. But so far, the Europeans are not doing that. So Iran is a self-respecting country. Iran is complying with the JCPOA. Exactly. What else can Iran do? The blame is America, and America solely.
Yep. Let me go to Belgium now, to Bresh. Bresh, as Marcus also rightly mentioned, Iran has been in full compliance with the nuclear deal. So is this the right thing for Europe to do? And the scale back thing has been exactly based on the JCPOA, because Europe did not do whatever it had to do under the deal. So Iran had no other way, and let's not forget, it took also more than a year after the U.S. withdrawal from the deal.
Yeah, I think this is a clear evidence that when push comes to shove, internationally speaking, the European Union is quite a pathetic organization. These nations, at least in the European Union, that are part of the JCPOA, they are pushovers, basically. Okay, we know that the United Kingdom has never really had any intention, probably, of really respecting, especially under Tory leadership, respecting the deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran. But even nations that say that they want to negotiate, that say that they want to continue as proper adults, let's say, and want to negotiate with Iran, nations like France and Germany, when the slightest bit of pressure is applied, they will keel over immediately and they will join the American camp. We've seen this before, of course, in imperialist conflicts regarding Syria. We've seen this regarding Libya. We've seen this regarding Iraq back in 2003 in many ways. So when you see this slight pressure now coming, in which Europe always keeps on saying, and now again, it's sickening to read the reports, for example, written in European media when they interview these European officials who say, yes, but we don't want to put sanctions on Iran, we want to save the deal. They keep on saying that. But it's a sickening lie, because they say that they want to save the deal, but at the same time, they do absolutely nothing. As you have said, it's been over a year since the Americans withdrew. What if the Europeans have to show for it? What do they have to show for it towards Iran? They promised a special deal. They promised a barter agreement in order to circumvent U.S. sanctions against companies that trade with Iran, but nothing of the sort has come forward. This deal exists only on paper. Iran has not profited from it in any way. So I believe this is this is a combination between Europe being a lackey indeed of the United States imperialist policy, combined with a sort of deeply rooted inherent racism. And I think the best example of this racism against people in the Middle East, against Iranians in this case, is shown, and I quote one of the senior officials in the European Union that was quoted by The Guardian newspaper, and I quote, it said, Iran is close to learning something that they cannot unlearn. And he was referring to this, the possible development of nuclear weaponry. So this is where they're talking about the possibility that that an Iranian can learn the development of nuclear power in a potentially dangerous way, which they cannot unlearn. So this idea is that Iranians cannot be trusted with this knowledge, and that they have to be prevented from the possibility of potentially discovering something that Europe does not like, because they believe they are not worthy of knowing, of understanding all this knowledge.
Right. Let me go back to London to Marcus. Marcus, they say that instead of actually fulfilling their promises within the JCPOA Europeans, so let's have this what the British Prime Minister called the Trump deal. How can Iran trust them? I mean, when Trump goes away and another president comes to office, we signed a deal with the administration, not with a person like called Barack Obama. And now they want us to sign a deal with Trump, and then what?
Well, given Donald Trump's visceral disliking of Iran and all things Iranian, it is quite fanciful and idiotic for Boris Johnson to put forward a proposed new deal with Iran that would be called the Trump deal, because Iran will not trust anything that comes from the mouth of Donald Trump, and especially after the Americans murdered General Soleimani. No, the JCPOA is a very important agreement. It is a milestone for trying to bring about a level of peace and stability in the Middle East, which is the most volatile part of the world. There is no other agreement to replace the JCPOA. Iran is in full compliance. The Europeans know privately it is a sound deal, and that Iran is in full compliance. The problem is that the Europeans have given in to the pressure from the United States of America, which speaks volumes about the independence.
Okay, Marcus, we're running out of time. If you allow me, I'll go to Belgium to Brecht and listen to Brecht's final comments regarding this so-called Trump deal. Brecht.
I agree indeed with what has been said already. You cannot make a deal with Trump. I know Boris Johnson calls Trump a deal maker, but basically Trump is a deal breaker. He is the visage of American imperialism without the humanitarian mask that Barack Obama wore. And Donald Trump is a complete tool in the hands of neoconservative, in the hands of the industries that seek to dominate the world, and especially seek to dominate the Middle East. And one of the main obstacles in their plan for domination of the Middle East is the Islamic Republic of Iran. As long as Trump and his companions and his masters are ruling the United States and ruling much of Europe, in fact, there can be absolutely no real hope, I'm afraid, for a fair deal to be reached with these people.
Okay, appreciate your comments with Marcus Papadopoulos, publisher and editor of the Politics First from London, and also Brecht Junkers, historian and journalist who joined us from Maaseik, Belgium. And that's the end of this news review. Thank you for watching.